Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take. The beginning of United Nations high-level week. It's when the General Assembly welcomes leaders from all over the world, and New Yorkers, beautiful weather, take to the streets, walk, subway. Really shouldn't be taking taxis and Ubers because you're not going anywhere that way. And the big news this week, and there are a lot of stories to follow, but Israel-Palestine and implications for the Middle East, for Europe, for the U.S., broader relations. A lot of movement there. The war, of course, in Gaza is continuing to rage on. Israel now sending troops into Gaza City, military occupation that they expect to last for at least another 6 months, routing an estimated 2,000 remaining Hamas fighters in Gaza City. Also, enormous amounts of damage being done to the civilians, most of whom still are sheltering as they can in that demolished city. The two-state solution, which has now been pushed ineffectively by the region and by the West for decades, is dead. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government strongly oppose it, and they're privately members of the cabinet calling the Palestinian Authority, which is the elected Palestinian body in the West Bank, a terrorist organization. Most Europeans are now joining the rest of the world in recognizing a Palestinian state, a symbolic move showing a level of frustration and support, however ineffective. Nearly 150 countries around the world already do recognize a Palestinian state. The United States does not and will not, and is increasingly isolated in that sentiment, though there are a few countries that always vote with the U.S., Pacific Island nations like Palau and the like. Netanyahu is telling his population that they need to prepare for international isolation. He understands that as they are winning their war against enemies in the occupied territories and more broadly across the Middle East, they are losing public opinion around the world. He says that Israel needs to become Athens and Super Sparta rolled into one. The big question is, how does Israel, facing that growing isolation, including among a majority of the American voting population, though not from its government, how do they decide to respond to this? Are they going to proceed with a longer-term occupation of Gaza and of actual annexation, formal annexation of the West Bank? The Prime Minister and Israeli leaders have said that they will. And this is their chance, since the Trump administration, by far their most important ally, ongoing military supporter, intelligence supporter, and not prepared to punish Israel for not going ahead with this in any way, is there for them, and it's only going to be more challenging for them later on. Trump doesn't like wars, wants to end them, but he really doesn't like losing wars, and he also loses attention and patience, which seems to be the case in Gaza, just as it seems to be the case on Russia-Ukraine. Plus, Trump sees Israel as a winner, which is why he quickly got on board with the strikes on Iran after Israel was successful and Iran didn't do much in response. Now, the Israeli people no longer support a two-state solution. Only about 35% in recent polls say they do. A strong majority say they oppose it. So Bibi is not suffering at all domestically from refusing to accept a Palestinian state. That's basically a dead letter for the Israeli people. But the Israeli people don't want a forever war. What they want is the release of remaining hostages, and then they want the Israeli soldiers to get out of Gaza. And that's not what the Israeli leadership is doing. They're expanding the war, which most people, including most Israelis, think is more likely to get the remaining hostages not released, but killed, and also putting more Israeli soldiers in harm's way. If the Israeli government decides to go ahead with annexation The United Arab Emirates has made clear privately and publicly that they will pull out of the Abraham Accords. In other words, the signature foreign policy achievement of the Trump administration will be no more. The UAE was the big breakthrough there compared to the other smaller, less important, less strategic states that joined. And this has benefited Israel economically, technologically. It's brought a lot of tourism. I mean, all of these things, that would be over. Also, the Europeans are talking about starting to put economic measures on Israel. They've talked about sanctions, but you're not going to get that because there won't be a 27-country unanimity. But if there were annexation, many European states would start to put punitive direct bilateral economic measures, would restrict investment and the like into Israel. Now, that could matter to Israel going forward. No one is going to vote out Netanyahu on the basis of his Palestinian policies, but it could easily be the case that an upcoming election in Israel would be run on greater isolation of Israel internationally, which is something that the Israeli people certainly do not want. The Israeli people don't want to become apartheid South Africa. But in a GZERO world of increasing impunity, it's harder to see that happening, either from the United States, from the Europeans, and from the Gulf states. And that's certainly the bet that the Israeli prime minister is making. So that's where we are this week. Lots to watch, lots to focus on. Not much of a breakthrough expected, and I'll be back to you all real soon.